The first time American engineers laid eyes on a captured German Panther tank, the battlefield was still scarred with the smoke of Normandy. The machine stood like a sleeping beast, its thick armor pitted by shrapnel, its massive 75mm gun still pointed toward the horizon as if defying defeat. The men who approached it had seen tanks before, hundreds of them, but never one like this. The Panther wasn't just another vehicle. It looked like something built from another world. Its sloped armor, its massive tracks, the precision of its welds. Everything about it radiated menace. One engineer whispered, "No wonder our Shermans keep burning." They all felt it. The uneasy realization that the Germans had built something terrifyingly superior. When they climbed inside, the smell of burnt oil and steel filled the cramped interior. Every control was engineered with cold precision. The turret traverse was smooth, the optics crystal clear, the layout efficient. American tank crews had long joked that their M4 Shermans were Ronsons. They lit up the first time they were hit. But standing inside the Panther, those jokes didn't feel funny anymore. The engineers ran their hands over the thick, glassy plate, 80mm of sloped armor that no standard American shell could penetrate. Reports came in from the front. A Panther could destroy a Sherman before the latter even got close enough to fire. It was a nightmare that had suddenly become real. The Panther's 75mm KWK 42 gun was a marvel of engineering, capable of piercing American armor at distances over 2 kilometers. Tank crews describe how shells from their own guns simply bounced off the Panther's front like pebbles. "We might as well be throwing rocks," one tanker said bitterly after watching his rounds ricochet into the dirt. The Panther was faster too, despite its heavier frame, its wide tracks allowing it to glide over mud where Shermans would bog down. For the first time, American soldiers realized they were facing a machine built not just for war, but for domination. As word spread, fear rippled through Allied ranks. Stories of Panther ambushes circulated like ghost tales, one tank wiping out entire platoons before disappearing into the forest. Crews began to improvise, flanking in desperate attempts to hit its weaker sides. But even then, the cost was brutal. The Panther didn't need luck, it needed only time. To many, it felt as though the war had shifted, that German engineering had built something America simply couldn't match. In workshops across France, captured Panthers were studied obsessively. Engineers took apart every bolt, every drive sprocket, every inch of that monstrous gun. They admired it, feared it, and cursed it all at once. What they found made their pride falter. The Germans had combined science and precision with ruthless purpose. It wasn't just a tank, it was a statement that the battlefield belonged to those who could build better. For a brief moment, even the most confident American officers wondered if they had underestimated the enemy's genius. But as the engineers worked deeper into the Panther's design, something unexpected began to surface. Hidden beneath the brilliance, there were cracks, signs of fragility masked by steel. The beast that seemed unstoppable had its own weaknesses, waiting to be uncovered. And soon, those same American minds that had stared in awe would begin to see the truth. Power on paper didn't always win wars. What mattered was endurance, reliability, and the will to keep moving when the enemy's masterpiece broke down. The Panther might have looked invincible, but war was about to prove that no machine, no matter how perfect, could escape its flaws. When American engineers dug deeper into the Panther's design, their awe slowly turned into understanding, and that understanding changed everything. Beneath the imposing armor and elegant engineering was a monster that demanded constant attention just to stay alive. The Panther's transmission was its greatest weakness. Under combat stress, gears shattered, bearings overheated, and engines failed after only a few hundred miles. Soldiers who once feared its silhouette began to notice abandoned Panthers on the side of muddy roads, their crews gone, their engines dead. For every Panther that rolled into battle, another was being towed or stripped for parts. The Americans began to realize something vital. The Germans hadn't built a tank for a long war. They had built a machine that looked perfect on paper but crumbled under the weight of its own complexity. In field tests, American mechanics compare the process of changing a Sherman's transmission with that of a Panther. What took an hour on the Sherman took days on the German tank, requiring cranes, special tools, and manpower that frontline crews didn't have. In the chaos of war, simplicity was survival, and the Sherman had that in abundance. It could be fixed in a field with basic tools and sent back into the fight before nightfall. The Panther, on the other hand, needed workshops and spare parts the German army simply couldn't supply anymore. By late 1944, as fuel ran low and Allied bombers tore apart supply lines, the Panther's biggest enemy wasn't the Sherman, it was time. American tankers also discovered that the Panther's superiority depended heavily on perfect conditions. Its long gun was devastating on open fields, but in the close hedgerows and narrow towns of Western Europe, it became clumsy. The massive turret turned too slowly, and its limited visibility made it blind to fast-moving threats. The Sherman, smaller and more agile, could outmaneuver it, striking from the sides or rear where the Panther's armor was thin. Crews learned to move in packs, calling in artillery or airstrikes to finish what their guns couldn't. What began as desperation slowly turned into strategy. Even German tank crews started to lose faith in their own machines. Reports described Panthers breaking down before they even reached the front. Engineers back in America noted how rush production and poor materials had started to plague German industry. The once feared war machine had become an unreliable burden. Meanwhile, American factories were producing Shermans faster than the Germans could destroy them. Over 50,000 in total, each one a small, mobile fortress that could be replaced, repaired, and redeployed endlessly. By 1945, captured German officers admitted the truth. The Panther had been a masterpiece that belonged to a different kind of war, one Germany no longer had the strength to fight. The Sherman, though less glamorous, embodied the industrial heart of the Allies, a weapon built not for perfection, but for persistence. Every Panther that failed to move became a silent monument to that difference. When the war finally ended, and the engineers reviewed their reports, they didn't see defeat in the Sherman's design. They saw victory in its endurance. The Panther had been a lion that could roar, but only for a moment. The Sherman, humble and unyielding, was a machine that kept rolling until the very end.